she asked me to step in and kind of kick us off today. I really love these soft skills and developmental courses and online learning, but when we all get together and get a chance to share some different topics that hit close to home. So today we have Mr. Junior Rowland promoting or presenting on really developing yourself and just having that some tools to help yourself grow in career, personally, and all that other fun stuff. So I'm gonna turn it over to Junior, and he's gonna get us started with developing yourself.
All right, thank you, Cody. Uh, can everyone see my screen yet?
Yes, we see you.
Okay. All right, so it did let me record, so this is recording, just so everyone has a heads up. Um, so thank you for introducing me, Cody, and thank you everyone for having me today. I love being a part of these soft skills presentations and seminars. I really think it gives us an opportunity to take some time and really fine tune some of those natural skills or those learned skills that we get as we continue our journey as managers developing past MIT and even for tenured managers, there's always some stuff that I think that we can gain from these presentations as a little bit of a refresher. So today I'm going to be talking about developing yourself, which I think is a very important topic, because as some of us began our journey of becoming managers years ago, and those that are just now becoming a manager, development is something that happens continuously. It's an ongoing process. I've been in this industry since I was 15 years old and I'm 42 now. And there's still things that I learn every single day, and when I pick up on those things, there's things that I love to share with others and things that I think that we assume oftentimes other people know on our team. And I think sharing insight and information just overall helps us to continue developing ourselves. It doesn't start as after that MIT process, but it's just an ongoing process throughout the time as we're managing on the floor and so on and so forth. So to jump right in, I like reading this quote that's here, right here. The successful people view learning and professional growth as a lifelong process. While we depend on our managers and they definitely play an important role in our overall career development, the people that are ultimately responsible for our level of success is us. I mean, you and me. We're the people that are responsible for that. So once we complete our management training, it's always a good start on that road to development, but it's only the beginning. That quote again, successful people view learning and professional growth as a lifelong process. These are the people that know that no one has all the answers and that there's always room for improvement. They make it a point to reflect on their experiences and take the initiative to learn from their mistakes. And when you view yourself as a work in progress, learning becomes easier. Reflecting upon your interactions and asking yourself how you can be more effective in the future will help you grow. And although self-reflection is important, you're not going to be successful working in a little bubble of just reflecting on yourself. You want to make sure you're always including others in your process and seeking their feedback and recognize that there's always room for improvement and opportunity for development. I think sometimes actively having conversations, although we can self-reflect and I can, look at myself and, when I sit back and, I look at overall performance and I'm always trying to find ways to just better who I am and how I do things. I love honest feedback and it's easier for me to hear from someone else what they see in me than me try to dissect myself because sometimes I can be overly critical or maybe I'm not going to pinpoint the exact things. Perception is a big part of what we do and listening to how other people perceive us and our style and the way we operate day to day. They can be really essential feedback in helping to help continue develop ourselves. So although self-reflection is one of those things that you want to practice often, don't be afraid to ask questions and and talk to your peers and see how they feel about you and just your overall development as you continue and progress throughout your career. So this is a glaring statistic when I read this, but 80% of American managers cannot answer these questions. And I'm going to go through these questions really quickly. And as we go through them, I want you all to stop and reflect and ask yourself, ask yourself each three of these questions. And can you clearly answer it, or would you struggle a little bit at first? Would you try to think of, what that response should be, or, what it is you think someone is looking for rather than just know the answer to these? So, what is my job? That's an important one. Understanding that people that are looking to continuously develop, if they don't know what their job is, if they don't know what their day to day entails, how can they continue to develop in something which they don't fully understand? What in it really counts? That one is important. Like, what is it that I do every day that really makes an impact? What is it that I'm doing within my day to day cadences? And as I come in, and what really makes a difference, what really impacts my business and my team and the overall operation, but truly understanding what it is that you do every day that really counts, and how well am I doing. And this is one that, as we turn in surveys to our hourly team members as well as managers, and we look for those types of feedback. One of the things that we find when those surveys are answered anonymously is that not enough people, and I would say not only in our industry, but many industries just out there doing any job, they don't fully understand how well they are doing. They have an idea, they have assumptions just based off of how their interactions go day to day with managers, how they feel they're doing based off of, people's general perception. But are we giving concrete feedback? Are we sitting down and following up and evaluating and giving those opportunities, or sharing those things that you're doing great? But do you truly know how well you're operating? And if you sat down with your immediate superior, would you two share those same views? Would they agree with how well you think you're doing? So I think that was a great statistic to find out in three questions, that when you walk away from this presentation, listing that and understanding as you go on and continue, how can you help others understand these three things in the areas that you oversee? So when we look at developing ourselves in action, what does that look like? I want to share a quick story of a manager that I did have that, did come in as an MIT. They were it was an external manager, and they were one of those managers that was a bit of, the know-it-all manager, that manager that came in and they felt they've been in industry for years. They've worked at those corporate settings in those chains, and just coming into PF Chang's was just another corporate setting for them. They were just looking to get through that MIT process, and the vibe that I got from them was not necessarily that they were going to absorb and grow, but that they knew what they were doing, and they just wanted to check the boxes so that they can move on to the actual position that they wanted to. So this know-it-all manager, when you think about it, some of the things um, that really affected them negatively in not developing throughout that MIT processes. Um, they didn't care to absorb. Every time a trainer was teaching them something, or a chef or a manager was trying to give them some insight into our business and who we are, they really weren't absorbing it, and they didn't want to learn any new info, even if it was something that they had never heard of. They felt it was something that they were going to get later on. So from the beginning, this developmental program was not being followed the way that it was intended to. And when they got out of training, they were able to get by and and meet all the minimum requirements to get through training. But what ended up happening to this manager is, one, this manager really just stayed stagnant in their position. We never saw much movement from this manager. They came in with goals of moving forward to eventually becoming an operating partner, an assistant operating partner, things like that. And they really never moved past the hourly position because they didn't take the time to continue. One, they didn't learn during that initial MIT process the way that they should have. And then when they walked away from that, they thought their learning ended. They didn't feel they had to continuously pick up and develop themselves and hone in on those skills, which maybe they were great. Maybe you did have the inner workings already going, but if you don't continue to develop those or don't continue to just fine tune those as you go in, then it just benefits you. And then ultimately, as an hourly manager, the team really felt that they were cold and unhelpful for the most part. And that impression of them feeling cold was because they weren't informed. They weren't constantly updating themselves on new recipe techniques and things that were changing in service. And it just wasn't a picture of a manager that cared to develop or move forward. Although actively, that's what they would communicate. In action, it didn't. And the ultimate end result was we ended up parting ways with them. They weren't a fit for who we are. They weren't picking up on the feedback we were giving and the opportunities that we were giving to allow themselves for the improvement. So really understanding that when we have those developmental programs in place, just absorbing and learning so much that we can from that MIT process in general, which is something that's so important. Um, as we get new MITs in our building and we're talking about them, is that's one of the only chances, especially for a front of the house manager, that we get to spend in that culinary world. So absorbing and developing and just learning everything you can, and then when you get out of there, getting behind a wok once a week, or, cooking an egg drop soup or fried rice or chicken lettuce wraps in downtime and things like that. And just really continuing to challenge yourself is going to benefit you. And then your team just begins to see you as a specialist and you're someone that can be relied on for credible information, and, it benefits you. But I wanted to share that story because it was a story of somebody that came in and was identified as someone who was great and had potential to become great, but because they stopped themselves from continuing to learn, continuing to grow and develop, they pretty much stopped their opportunities to grow with us as a company. So, something that's really important to keep in mind. This is a really fun quote, and I visually put this, in my mind because I think when we look at this from a visual perspective, as we really, as we read through it, it really makes a bigger impact. So, talent without discipline is like an octopus on roller skates. There's plenty of movement, but you never know if it's going to be backwards, forwards, or sideways. And I think, that's a hilarious visual, but it's a visual that we can share with our team members and our managers and, our peers. It's when you think about that, what that looks like, it's silly, but it's crazy. That octopus is obviously never going to go anywhere when every leg is trying to go in a different direction. You're just staying in place, and eventually you're going to get frustrated. You're going to wear out, and you're going to either quit or you're going to pass out, either or, but it's not a positive benefit. So I would challenge you all to take that, this quote with you, and put it up in your manager's office, because I think that that's something it's really powerful statement when we visually look at it. So, what are some things that we can do to help with developing ourselves and putting it into action, and some actual, tangible things that we can talk about today that, you can walk away from and begin to work with? And the first thing that I want to talk about is our SWOT analysis. When we think of a SWOT analysis, one, for those of you that know Richie Valenti, it just comes back to me because Richie was always, I want you to do a SWOT analysis of this store and that store, and it was all about SWOT analysis. We think of our business when we think of a SWOT analysis, and how can we observe the things that we're doing, the opportunities around us, and the overall businesses around us that are potential threats and things that can be taken away from us. But how do we translate that to more of an internal development piece? And I really liked when I saw this presentation, this breakdown was here, because I honestly never thought of that SWOT analysis from a personal development standpoint. But let's go through it together. So, what does SWOT stand for? It's going to stand for your strengths, your weaknesses, and your opportunities. And when we look at this analysis, ideally the first step is to make a long list of these things, of every factor that defines what your personal development is and what you want it to be. And then what's equally obviously in this is that the strengths and the opportunities are both going to be positive things that you're listing when you begin to list those items in these boxes, or and then you're going to have your weaknesses and your threats, which are both your negative considerations. And when you want to express these relationships, it can be helpful to think of them as, a two by two matrix. So this is what the two by two matrix is. And when you break it down, you have your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. Your strengths are, going to be some or potentially positive internal factors, while your weaknesses will be those potentially negative internal factors. Your opportunities will be your potentially positive external factors, and your threats are going to be your potentially negative external factors. What you want to think about when you're going through this is, some questions you want to ask yourself to be able to go through this SWOT analysis and fill it out effectively is, what's your strongest asset? What's the thing about you that makes you, great? What's the strongest thing that you do or you think your biggest strength is? And then what do you do? What do you offer that makes you stand out from the rest? As leaders, we always want to stand out from the crowd. We always want to be able to have someone walk into a room and know who the leader is in that room. And what do you offer that makes you stand out from the rest and makes you be looked at as somebody that's an effective leader that effectively develops themselves. And then, do you have any specific expertise? Is there something that you do better than someone else, or that the team that you're a part of that you're really great at? Maybe you're an expert in crunch time. Maybe you're a good at culinary. You can go back there and you can help in pantry and roll some sushi and make some dumplings. Maybe your strength is the floor and being out there, but truly understanding your strengths and weaknesses. And as I did one of these, I think, to go back to that first point, one of the biggest things to do is just make a long list of everything that you feel like defines your personal development, and from that list, you're going to be able to pull out these strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But laying it out on a chart and something that you can physically see makes it something that's more actionable. It's something that's in front of you. It's something that you can work on, and you can pick these four things and then maybe move on to another four things. Maybe you put more than one thing in each box, but one of the main things is not to pick something that's going to be overwhelming or something that's not realistic to the point where you feel like you're really not going to be able to make an impact. But this is more for you. There's really not, unless your OP or MD or MP is asking you to perform a SWOT analysis for yourself and turn it into them so that they can review. This is really mainly for you and your own development. So you want to be as honest as possible and really notate when you're making an impact in these areas and you are seeing continuous development within yourself. But this is just one example of something that I think is really great. So, what are some other things that we can do to develop yourself? How can you ultimately develop yourself once you've done this SWOT analysis and you've identified some things that you want to work on and some things that you're great at and all that good stuff? How can we put this into action? So you want to there's many ways that you can develop yourself, but these are just a couple tips that I think that are pretty valuable and how you can help initiate your own development. So find something you can learn from each person with whom you work. I think that that's something that's so important. On our manager recap that we send at the end of the night in the San Diego location, one of the questions that we have here on that is, what did you learn? What is something new you learned today? And then in parentheses, it says it can be either big or small, anything. And that has become such an impactful thing to us. We added that to our end of night recaps about 2 or 3 months ago. And, we constantly are now challenging ourselves every day to find something that we're learning because we want to enter in that recap. We don't want to leave that space blank, whether it's the smallest thing from learning a recipe had this ingredient that you had know of, to to maybe you learned the whole new process and now you can, fill out an entire P&L from scratch on your own. Whatever it is, it can be big, it can be small, but there's something that we can take away from each and every day. And it's not just learning from our mentors and the people that we report to. It's learning from each other, learning from your team, learning from the people that we manage every day, because there's a lot of information that a lot of people have that we don't share so often. But when we have conversation, when we're engaged with our team members, when we're doing table visits and talking to people from out of town, there's so many things we can learn every single day. So just challenge yourself to find those things, and I would challenge you to go away and maybe put that question in your office or make it part of a recap. But what are each and every one of you and your teammates learning every day that you can share, and then you're teaching the next person or the person that's reading that recap? That's how that symbiotic or that learning and teaching just continues to work. And it'll be an ongoing culture in your restaurant. But challenge yourself to that. Learn to look at negative feedback as useful information. I always say, when we get negative feedback, sometimes we do have the option. There are going to be some points of negative feedback where you can't help but take it personally and take it negative. But there's a lot of negative feedback that we can really learn from. We can really take what they're saying, that we can either walk away and take offense to it and let it do nothing but fester inside of our heart, and let that affect your next day and the rest of your shift. Or you can take it and you can say, that person is right. Sometimes I always say, I never give anybody the opportunity to shoot bullets at me. I'm never going to give you the ammunition to put in your gun to shoot at me, because I want to make sure that relationship is built there, where if you're giving me feedback, it's pure feedback based on something that you're observing. But there are times where I do things and things come up where I need someone to give me that real life feedback. And I try my best to use it as useful information, rather than take it personally. So challenge yourself to do the same thing, because sometimes there will be some harsh feedback that you get throughout your career that can really be useful if you stop and take the personal emotion out of it, and really just say, that is a valid point, and maybe I can do better there. Um, Approach every day with a sense of discovery, and that's coming into every single shift. And, when you're going over your checking cards with your team members, when you're reading emails, there's something that you can pull away from anything that comes through, whether it's an email from Jose Gutierrez that's sending out his daily recaps of all the information on agriculture. Something that I learn all the time is when I read all those agricultural things of why lettuce looks the way it does, or why our produce is coming the way it does, because of weather and soil and things like that. There's just so much that goes on within the four walls of our building, that you should be able to approach every day with that sense of, I'm going to learn something today. Something new is going to come my way. And if it's not, then go out and seek it, because you'll find, you'll be a plethora of information during your time with us, or with anyone. Confront problems instead of avoiding them. Confrontation is always something that can be a little bit difficult. Um, I'd probably say there's a good portion of people in there that are not good at confrontation and try to avoid confrontation at all points. But when you realize that you can face them head on and not be afraid to have those difficult conversations, you'll find you just gain more at the end. When we fester on problems and we hold them inside and we just keep them to ourselves, we're not learning anything, we're not growing, we're not developing in any way. What we're doing is we're just hurting ourselves, and you may adversely be affecting your development, because now you're holding on to something negative that you just may say, what, I don't want to do that because I feel this way about this, rather than having those difficult conversations and confronting the problems instead of running away from them. And I challenge everyone to have those conversations in a professional way. We talk about having difficult conversations and being able to be comfortable having them, but we have to make sure, when we have the difficult conversations, removing emotion is very important. We're human beings. I mean, it's natural for us to be emotional, but confront those problems, with fact-based information, with a professional demeanor and a demeanor of, hey, I would like to work through this together rather than confronting them or not confronting them and holding on. Establishing goals for yourself every year. With my team, I think it's so important for us to establish goals. I have goal setting sessions with each of my managers and chefs, and I give them, I want them to give me personal goal, short term goal, long term goal, and team goals. And they type those up and they send them to me, and we sit down and we do one on one goal setting sessions for the year. And then 6 months in, I pull out the goal sheet they handed up to me at the beginning of the year, and we talk about how far we've come with achieving those goals. We celebrate the goals that they were able to achieve. We talk about what we need to do to achieve the rest of the goals, or if they weren't able to achieve those goals, how can I help, or what can we do together to make sure that we're working on this. Give me one moment. I think my computer just signed out. Sorry.
While Junior's getting that sat back up, guys, I know I can relate to a couple of the stories he was sharing, and one thing that kind of came to my mind was how important it is that we stay open to that. And I think that, or maybe some of our newer managers might not be as aware that those moments are happening, that those kind of learning moments are happening. So being open to those is so important, and seeking those out. And that SWOT exercise, I haven't heard that one for a while, so I'm really excited about SWOT. That's a great reminder. Love it.
All right. Looks like I'm back. Thanks, Cody.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and like just like you said, that SWOT thing I think is great, and putting that into practice I think is gonna be, fantastic if you all take away and utilize those. So lastly on this list is take more risks. I think a lot of times we let fear govern who we are, and we really I don't know. We're just so terrified to do so many things in life that we're afraid to take risks, and that really hinders our development because we're scared of what's not familiar to us, and we're scared of what's out of the norm. But you'll find that if you challenge yourself to really dive in and to do more things that you're not comfortable with, you're really gonna begin to develop in areas where you probably wouldn't have developed otherwise. So I want to go through this, and I'm not looking for any feedback, but you are free to turn your mic off and share, or put a note in the comment box. But this is more food for thought, so I want you all to think on these for a minute. So um when you were during management training, a difficult lesson I learned was, so something that you may have learned throughout your management training, whether it be with PF Chang's or somewhere else, but what was one difficult lesson you may have learned? And then what would you have done differently in that situation? When you look back on it in retrospect, is there something that you may have been able to do differently, so that it wouldn't have been a difficult lesson to learn rather than just a lesson that was learned? And have I used the strengths this week to develop myself further by making sure that you understand what your strengths are, and be proud of your strengths. I think a lot of times some of us are very humble, whether it be by nature or just because you're just not an outspoken person. But if you're good at something, let it be known that you're good at it. I think we should all be proud of the things that we're great at. And not only does it help celebrate ourselves and make us feel good about what we do every day, you know, that someone else may see how good you are at something or hear how confident you are about something, and they may ask for development, and ask how you can help them, and use you as a tool in their ongoing search for being better at what they do. So ask yourself these questions and, share these with your team also in manager meetings and in team member meetings because development is for everyone. And, you can develop as a host into a service assistant as a busser. This is not purely just for management and upper level leadership, but I think that these are some good exercises to share with your team. So, we want to look at a way to develop yourself by using the GROW method. This is a structured approach that was developed in 1980 by Sir John Whitmore. He was a pioneer in the executive coaching field. And basically, this model represents a way to add clarity to the coaching conversation. You can use it in your own development, and you can use it both in self coaching and in securing a coach to help you. So the first one is the first G in grow. Grow is going to be the acronym is a goal, and I touched on this a little bit earlier. But G stands for goal. What does success look like for you in the next 3, 6, and 9 months? This step helps you identify and focus on a specific personal or professional goal based on existing circumstances. For example, completing a certification or degree, getting a promotion, or furthering your networking skills. One tip is to align career goals with your organization's priorities and self reflect on where you can impart value. When the end of the year arrives, what specific outcomes or results do you want to celebrate? Begin with the end in mind to provide clarity on what you deem is important in your evolving professional journey. So, to speak to that, is basically what I said a minute ago, setting those goals. It's always great when those goals are in line with company standards and things that we're working on as a whole. Because from a professional standpoint, it's really just going to help you continue to grow, develop within your role and move forward if that's something that you're looking to. But again, revisiting those goals and not being afraid to restructure them and challenging yourself for, something deeper or harder if you feel like it was something that was easily attained. But, development starts with that goal setting. And then we go to the R, which stands for reality. What assumptions should you check or avoid? If using a coach, determine whether the rationale of why coaching is necessary is the same for you and your coach. Focusing on the current landscape can help you identify what may be getting in your way of achieving your goals. Opening yourself up emotionally and psychologically to what is currently happening can be cathartic, but it can also leave you feeling vulnerable. That is a time when a trusted coach or confidant can provide support. Living in reality based thinking is something that I think is, easier said than done. I think we all like to think ideal situations and ideal scenarios, but really understanding, having reality based answers and reality based goals that are really going to help you develop yourselves. And again, taking that when I think reality, I think back to that negative feedback. The negative feedback just may be the real picture rather than the ideal picture or, other than what you may be perceiving as working towards developing yourself. The reality of the situation may not be that. And getting some of that negative feedback or that realistic feedback from peers will really help set you, on a path where you can recalibrate and realign to work towards those initial goals you set for yourself. And then the O in grow is going to be for options. What are the options? Dream together and co create with your coach. This phase can be the most fun, especially when you can brainstorm with a confidant or self reflect on what's possible. Do not limit yourself to options that are within your immediate comfort zone. It's critical to ideate and not restrict yourself to your current ability level. So, what are your options for development, and really challenging yourself? And I think we tend to stick to things that we're comfortable with. It's like, oh, I'm great at crunch time, so I'm going to continue developing into another administrative system with numbers, and I want to keep on working at that. Well, that's great. You are developing in other areas, but you're developing in areas around the same realm. A well-rounded leader, a well-rounded mentor, especially in our field, in our company, is going to be someone that steps outside of those things. If you find yourself not wanting to get behind the walk and you find yourself not wanting to put in monthly orders for US foods, if you find, maybe reviewing inventory, these are all things that you tend to run from, or, you rather not deal with them if you don't have to. Challenge yourself to that, know what the options are, but don't take the easy options over yourselves, ideate. And I can't emphasize how important it is to ideate, because that's that picture perfect setting. When you ideate and you create that picture perfect scenario, you tend to do things to develop yourself to achieve those scenarios and get there quicker. They may not always attain that perfect, idea or scenario that you had, but they are going to help to get you there quicker. So understand your options. And then finally, the W, that's going to be for the way forward. What steps you take to accomplish these goals, ensure accountability. Your list of options may be longer than you can complete, so prioritization is key. Short term wins generate more self confidence to continue the journey and then gain big wins. Ask yourself what you can do tomorrow or by a week's end to meet your goal. This is the time to think about new habits you want to build, or systems and processes you can implement to hold yourself accountable to changes. It's perfectly acceptable to start small and build your action items list as you gain more confidence. So again, I think, that last statement, it just all really ties in all the other parts of the acronyms, but really what steps you're taking to accomplish your goal, and really stopping halfway through as you're trying to achieve or as you're trying to develop in a certain area, and just stopping and looking and letting yourself know, did I achieve this thing that I set out 3 months ago? And it can be something small. And that's why I think in my goal setting sessions, it's very important for to make sure my managers are not only putting those long-term goals and those team goals, but those short-term goals, because those are the things we can really celebrate. Those are the things when we sit down in June and I pull out that list, I want to be checking those off and saying, high five, you achieved all those short-term goals, because that's going to build that confidence. It's really going to build that energy to continue developing and continue going, because those small wins just really take you to the end of that battle. And the battle is the ultimate area you want to win, So just really understanding how to stop and self calibrate, and just really assess where you are and where your development is. Oh, we went over reality. Action. I told. Sorry, I was going through and not clicking. So to recap everything really quickly, um, there's some books here that I really wanted to share with everyone. I know over my years with PF Chang's, we've gotten some really great books from some really great leaders and authors in the professional world, and I think a lot of times we really don't take advantage of some of these things that are available to us. But there's a lot of tried and true practices and studies out there, and some things that we do every day, and they really can help you throughout your career. And when you think development, just spending about 15 to 30 minutes a day, you can read up to one book a month, and that can be 12 books a year. And I know we work in a demanding industry, and there's a lot of things that we have to do every day, but just finding that 15 minutes again for that self development, how to find more ways to say yes and work on yourself so that you can progress forward, than finding reasons not to and finding the excuses of why you couldn't. But these are some books that I think that you can find all over. There is one book here, How Full Is Your Bucket, that I do want to make everyone aware of, that we do have quite a few copies at the GSC. So if you are interested in getting a copy of the How Full Is Your Bucket, you can feel free to shoot Mary an email, and she will be more than happy to work with you and get you a copy. But if you start there, I think that's a great start. Take advantage of something that we already have in place. But outside of these, I know there's tons of leadership books that I've read over the years, and just different mindsets and different ideas that you hear from different people, that I think can really be beneficial in overall developing yourself. But knowing that some of this is you, if not all of it, I always like to say and use the analogy of, in college, when we went to college, I used to have other students that would get upset and tell me, oh man, I didn't pass the test because the professor didn't go over this, or the professor didn't tell me that, or I know he didn't say that. And it's like, at what point did you take charge of that for yourself? I mean, you're paying for your education. This is not, something that's mandatory. It's you. This is about your self development, your growth into learning in the career. So you can go to college and you can, get out of there with a low GPA and complain that somebody didn't teach it to you, or you can get out of college and, be magna cum laude and have a high GPA because not only did you learn from your professors, but you took over your development. You really took hold of it and you really made the most of everything that you were given, and you weren't depending on everyone else to develop you. There is a part where people are going to develop you, but a lot of it's up to you. So this is another exercise that I think is great. It's just like a little shift card. You take 5 minutes a day, um, and you write down what you've observed and how can you apply it in the future. A lot of learnings gained through observation. It's a good part of what we do as restaurant managers every day, observing our team on the floor, observing our kitchen, cooking our food and following our recipes, observing them prepping vegetables. Watching is a big portion of what we do. So observe and be aware of your peers, handling situations and obstacles that they encounter throughout their shifts, because I really think that can benefit, and talking to them. There's times where, my market partner and I, we do something together and I listen to him deal with the situation. And I'm like, man, Mike, I love hearing you deal with that, because in my mind I would have went the total opposite direction and this is how I would have handled it. But I've learned something from him just by observing. So take part in that and make sure that you're really observing and take these notes. What did you observe today and how can you apply it? Even if it's one thing that you write on this list, it's one thing that you can walk away from and just talk to another manager. Hey, so and so, I saw you deal with this guest at that table and the guest was being really difficult. What'd you do there? They look like they left really happy, or some managers are great at coaching and others are not, but just making sure that you're observing, asking questions, engaging, and then just overall doing your best to apply it. So that is all that I have for you all on developing yourself. I know I'm just about at time, but if anyone has any questions at all, I'm happy to answer any questions. You can always email me. I'm happy to share this deck and any info with you, but if there's any questions, feel free to ask.
Junior, amazing job. I definitely learned something today on the call, and I'm going to take back some of this information for myself and my team. I know that I'll just share, sorry, but one of the things we hear from managers so often is I'm not being developed, or how, I want to be developed. And again, it's so much of it is 90% us and internally, and are we taking care of ourselves? So really appreciate the time, everybody. Hopefully got something out of it. And Junior, amazing job as always. So with that, I'll give you guys the rest of your day back and appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Junior.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye all.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Junior.